get started, so if we have questions and stuff, we have plenty of time. Thanks for coming. Thanks to Jeff for coming. He's got a busy schedule, so we're lucky to have him in town for a little bit. So we did this last year, worked out well, and we had kind of the second one, and I think the feedback was really good, so something we wanted to do again. When I started racing, Steve Johnson, who runs USA Cycling, did one of these for our bike club and learned a lot, and then going out on the road and hopefully kind of put it into practice. So Jeff and I kind of broke it down. I think you started this.
If you want to, yeah.
So we picked tonight. Thanks for sorry for the short notice, but with the first Criterium at Rocky Mountain Raceway this weekend, everyone's excited. The weather looks like it's going to be good. Rocky Mountain Raceways are super fun, and it's a really good place to learn how to race because you eliminate a lot of variables. Like, it's the same people, it's the same course every time, and you can learn a lot by just kind of focusing on the other specifics. But so a lot of this will kind of be tailored for Rocky Mountain Raceway, and for a normal kind of four-corner Criterium, it changes things a little bit, but we'll talk about that. So maybe we'll go ahead and start with the pre-race.
Yeah, we'll just. Oh, you want to go through this first?
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about this like later on in the breakaway. But yeah, so to me, I like to think of this as like here we are. You guys are the team. Brian and I are director sportif, and so and the race is obviously the RMR. So how do we go into this race and think about what are we going to do to be successful as a team or as an individual? First thing you either have to decide, are you racing as yourself, for yourself, or are you racing as a team? So, you got to kind of look at what, as a team, what are your strengths, or as an individual, what are your strengths? And obviously you can apply those strengths to the team concept, or you can apply them to yourself. So you need to look at, doing that. We look at the RMR, and what is it? It's it's a mile and a half around, flat course, windy, and everybody knows it really well. So you have to kind of go into it and assess, what can you do in this race to make a difference, and how much of a difference can you make, to affect the race. Are you a sprinter, or are you someone that needs to look for opportunities? You need to we need to go into that race and ask ourselves, what are we trying to get out of it? And obviously, what we really want to get out of it in the end is to win. And I think a lot of people, or almost everybody, and I've done this with my own teammates, and said, like, we're doing this bike race to win the bike race. We're not doing it to get in the breakaway and then ride easy. We're going in the break. We're doing. Everyone wants to do the race to win, I think, and at least that's the end result. And it's good to come into a bike race with strategy, and and again, just to reiterate that's kind of how you have to look at your strengths and weaknesses. Let's see. Get
so
a
then,
little off track.
I mean, I'll race out there a lot. There will be 4 or 5 teams in the A flight. Jeff's there by himself, right? He's a lot stronger than almost everybody else there, but he's approaching the race with kind of a different set of strengths and weaknesses than somebody who's maybe taking part in a team. But if you go to a race and you see a bunch of people wearing jersey A and jersey B and jersey C, and you're by yourself, that changes things a little bit. You got to know that A, B, and C are all going to be watching each other, and you can use that to your advantage. They also should know that if A, B, and C are all going down the road, you probably ought to get up there too, because all their teammates are going to stop riding. So it's a lot of those, what are your strengths and weaknesses? What are your team's strengths and weaknesses? So obviously if you're riding in kind of the team set and you've got a really good sprinter, that changes things dramatically. But the same's true on the competition side. What are their strengths and weaknesses? Do they have some guy who could just drill it and bring every breakaway back? And are they going to just ride ultimately for a group sprint? So those are important things. Kind of getting beyond the riders, it's important to look at the course conditions. So RMR, typically either crosswind. Well, if there's wind, it's either crosswind on both straightaways, because we kind of drew the RMR here. If the wind's blowing from the north or from the south, it's going this way. It's pretty much going to be 2 sections of crosswind. If it's blowing east-west, it's going to be headwind, tailwind. And that changes things. It changes where you'd want to attack. It changes like where you'd want to ride in the field a little bit. So that's something you got to consider. And luckily when you get out there, there's all these flags that kind of show you which way the wind's blowing from. And the RMRs, we've been racing there since '96. And it's changed drastically by them building those big dirt mounds on the north kind of east side. It's really changed the dynamics of the wind, and then all the fencing around like the oval and stuff has changed the wind too. So when we first started racing there, it was almost always crosswind. Because that's typically the Salt Lake, the wind blows out of the north or out of the south and up and down the valleys. So anyway, pre-race, it's important to know your strengths and weaknesses, know your competitor's strengths and weaknesses, what the course looks like, conditions, and then start to think about a plan.
And to go to the plan, there's really in that race, there's 2 scenarios. Breakaway goes away, and the breakaway gets to fight out the race. 3 guys, 5 guys, 6 guys, or you have a group sprint. So you have to kind of ask yourself what your strengths are. Do you want to have a breakaway? If you want to have a breakaway, there's really no point. Or if you want to have a breakaway and you realize that you can't sprint, there's no point in waiting around and waiting for the sprint, because it's kind of a lost opportunity. But if you look at yourself and you say, hey, I'm one of the fastest people here, there's no point in spinning bullets or doing things that are going to upset the race to where there isn't going to be, a group sprint. And there are things that like the weather, like Ryan said, that are going to make certain outcomes more inevitable. If you've got a 20-mile-an-hour headwind coming down the finishing line straight, it's probably going to be a sprint, because no one's going to be able to power away and stay away, and it's so much easier for people to chase. So you kind of have to take that into account when you make your plan. Obviously, there's always the third thing that we haven't really talked about is it's also a great race to try some new things and experiment and and learn. And if you don't think you can win, and and you obviously you want to get better as a bike racer, it's always great to go out and try and lay it out on the line, risk it. A guy who was a mentor for me in Belgium in 1997, I think 98. When I was just starting out as just an amateur bike racer, told me try. Go in every single breakaway. Don't. Basically, if you get dropped out of the race, that's a success, because you challenge yourself and you put yourself beyond what you could do. Hiding out and waiting for a sprint that you're not going to win. Yeah, you're gonna ride around with your buddies and you're gonna get 45 minutes or an hour of bike racing in. But if you go out there and you dig deeper than you've ever dug before, and you only make it a half hour, I think that's going to make you a stronger individual, and you're going to come back the next week and you'll know more of what you got in the tank. You right there, that's experience. And that's I think one thing that RMR is really good for is gaining experience. And and then as you get better, then you can you find out, hey, look at that, I go out there and I can ride. Turns out I can ride 20 minutes full gas and still have something in the tank. That's my ability. Or you get out there and you say, man, that's not for me, but I sure can go fast for 200 meters, so I better sprint. So it's a great, like Ryan was saying, it's a great race to gain experience, and then you take that to the next race. You take that to a 4-corner crit, and you know what you have. So going into it, I think it's really important to evaluate and decide. Are we going to sprint? Or we as in yourself, or are you going to go for a breakaway? And so then we kind of go into, I think that segue very well. So
let's think about during the race. Like I always, when I'm talking to guys that I'm riding with, I think about the odds, right? You have 7 guys in a 60-guy race. That's 7 out of. We'll say we have 6 out of 60, so it's 1 in 10. See. When anytime in the, if you or your team are doing the race to try to win, if you're making an effort, there needs to be a reason for doing it. unless you're Kirk. So, anyway, if you're up at the front and you're riding hard, there's got to be a reason. If you're chasing something down, there's got to be hopefully, it could be, you got someone like Jeff on your team who's strong enough that he's up there just breaking everyone's legs, so you can counterattack. But that's not usually the case around here. It's usually a little more of a chess match, and there's a guy who will start go like a banshee out of the gate. Hopefully that they have a plan and they're going to counterattack when that guy gets brought back. But anyway, it's important. Like, if you're making a hard effort, it's got to be to do something more than like flex your muscles. So I always think about the odds. Like, if you're in a breakaway and there's 5 guys up there and you're working hard, are you increasing you or your team's odds of winning the race, or are you taking the best sprinter up the road and kind of decreasing your team's chances for winning the race? So it's not a bad. And if you're by yourself, for sure you went from 1 out of 60 to 1 out of 5. You've increased your chances dramatically. So always kind of be thinking that way. And you also got to realize who's in the, who else is up there. So Jeff, we'll let Jeff talk about attacking because he's usually the one breaking our backs out there with big sharp attacks. So.
Just one thing to kind of speak to Ryan's point. One analogy that I like is, spinning your bullets. If you come into the race and like Ryan was saying, I can come to the RMR and I kind of, it's a little bit like I've got an AK-47. I know I can just fire off at will. But I go to the Tour of Flanders and I've got a Derringer like tucked into my into my garter belt, and so I get and that's the thing. It's like that's. One thing I like to say is that's the beauty of cycling. Everyone there's a level for everybody, but you need to realize if you really are racing strategically and trying to get a result, what are you showing up with? Do you have one bullet? Then you better choose wisely. If you feel like you got 6, then you can use those. And but it's like Ryan said, it's really important to make sure that each effort counts. And so that kind of leads into like since we're talking about the RMR, attacking. One thing that just really specific examples. Here we are. We've got our little race course. What I've noticed recently, really the last few times I've been out there, is it's almost always wind.
Yeah, the wind's coming like this.
Yeah, and so if I were to attack anywhere on this course, where would I do it? Would I do it right here, or would I do it right here? If you attack here, you've got 500 meters of full gas headwind that you need to then overcome with everybody able to, it's always easy to jump up to someone. You can do a quick 20-second effort to close a gap, but it's really, really hard as the individual attacking to do this, 2-minute effort and maintain power over the entire field. Who's, obviously there's a lot of people kind of invested in chasing you down. So, giving away some trade secrets here. When I'm out of the RMR and I want to try to get away, this is at the end of the course, just before the bridge, or and I see this all the time. This is where the move sticks, is a perfect place because you have that 20-second effort that you can maintain. You go left, and then all of a sudden everyone kind of has to do the same amount of work because all of a sudden there's crosswind, and that kind of cuts it down to where then everyone is sort of doing their own work, and then you've got a tailwind. And so you have to be able to maintain speed, but the wind is on your side, and everyone's kind of then the top speed is kind of the maximum velocity, and no one can really go faster than that. And so that's as far as timing efforts, you kind of need to go into any race thinking about that. Same with four-corner crit or any course with some technical stuff in it. You try to think about where is the effort that I'm going to make going to give me the biggest benefit and cost everyone else the most. If you don't want to put in big efforts where everyone can just sit on your wheel. It doesn't do you any good, and you're down a bullet. And so it's really important to like when strategizing for a race to kind of and analyze the course, analyze the conditions. If you're on a course that's really technical and it's wet, figure it out and figure out where the corners are going to be the slickest and where people are going to be the most skittish. And try to get through there first. Sometimes you get through there first, tiptoeing through it, and still everyone can't follow you because there's always an advantage of being in the lead. And so it's really important to kind of make sure that whatever you're doing is effective and doing you the most benefit while obviously hurting everyone else. And then
sticking with the attacking mode, like let's say two guys. These are my riders. I stole this from Steve. These guys they stick together, unfortunately.
Chase each other down.
So those two guys just attack. They're going down the road, and typically what happens is everybody starts going hard. And you got this kind of like line of people chasing them down. And typically the move that works the best is when this one's really, really, really hard, and these guys are just barely able to get there. These two guys, who are often probably teammates of these people, or they're just riding up, they're riding in the front. They're probably working hard, but these guys are working really hard. These guys are working really hard. And as soon as everybody catches these guys, these two guys just nail it. And a counter-attack situation like that, it might be the second one, it might be the third one. But very rarely does some guy just ride off the front of the group and stay away, or two guys or whatever. But you'll start to see a pattern develop, like when something gets brought back, and especially if a team is dominating a race, they just keep doing it, just keep hitting them and hitting them and hitting them until finally everyone's like, we're done, we're gassed, and all the other people are back here and they're really gassed. So anyway, counterattack and timing your attack is important. Definitely, like with the wind, it's important. But if you're going down the drag strip and you're right here, and your teammates are just coming back from a hard attack and the field's chased them back, even though it sucks to attack into a headwind with 900 meters to go, you gotta go. Like, that's
teamwork.
So that's a whole
sometimes you fire bullets for your team, and you don't get anything out of it yourself, but you get the satisfaction of setting someone up, or sometimes that's. I think the other thing is it's always. I've always noticed that the breakaway that sticks, in my experience, is the one that goes after the one that should have got away. It's the one after. It's like Ryan said, there's two guys up the road, and it's full alert. Everyone's worried about them, because it's the strong guys, and no one wants to let the strong guys go. It's the cagey person that waits back, lets everybody else freak out, chase those two guys down, is a big conservative, and then counters, because then everyone's gassed. The two guys that are in the break were gassed. Anyone who chased them down is gassed, and then all the people that are at the back tailing and getting whiplash, they're tired too. So if you go then, there's a lot of time there's kind of a collective, like everyone needs to catch their breath, and all of a sudden you've got 20, 30 seconds and you're in business. So it's I think it's one of those things where you see that the winning move often comes right at the end of the hardest period, and so that's where positioning and kind of really reading the race, looking at the strategy of the other teams, like Ryan said, team A, B, and C, if they want to be in the move, obviously you need to kind of be there too. You need to read who's going to go up the road. If there's only three strong teams and you want to be in that move with those three strong teams, if you're part of that team, you better be one of those three, or if you're part of sort of the mercenary team 4, you need to be attached to that, because then that's when teamwork takes its course, and then those guys get to stay away. I think a lot of people think of bike racing as the strongest guys get away in the break, and it really isn't. It's the smartest people that get in the break. You obviously have to have the physical ability and you have to have the conditioning, but it's as much about being present in mind and being aware of what's going on and putting yourself in the right position as it is about being the strongest guy there. This guy is really good at that. I've seen him do some pretty amazing stuff based on not a lot of fitness but a lot of savvy. And
that could segue us into our next topic, conserving energy. So
he's good at this. I'm less good at this.
So what allows you to contest a sprint at the end of the race, what allows you to make a sharp attack, is to not waste all your energy the rest of the race, right? So unlike a marathon where it's just everybody going down at their threshold and just grinding each other in the mud, this is way more like your sub-threshold, and then bam, you're like way over it. So you got to be, when you're not making that effort, you got to be doing things that save energy. So the RMR, it's not quite as critical to ride at the front, or in, when they say at the front, it's not at the front, but it's in like the front 10 or front 15 riders, right?
Front
so like,
quarter.
yeah, if you're in the back, if you're in the back, say in the back third of the field, the brakes are on and off, you come out of the turn, like guys who have raced out there, you know you go around that U-turn, and if you're at the back, it's like a full sprint just to get kind of back into stat. Yeah, because everyone's kind of slowed down, and the guys at the front have their choice of a really nice line, and they probably don't even hit their brakes. They just stop pedaling, and then they're on the gas again. So, whereas on the 4-corner criterium, 10 guys back is about as far back as where you're not wasting energy. I mean, there's a different, every course is a little different, but you think about it, every time you hit your brake, that's energy you've wasted.
Forward momentum lost.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, not to say you can ride every crit without hitting your brakes, but when you, especially when you really bear down on the brakes, that's typically like, it's from bottlenecking and things like that. So you waste a lot of energy there. Following the right people. I'm on this guy's wheel a lot out there, like especially like in that situation where there's 4 guys going down the road and he's still in the field. I mean, he's probably got more than one shadow, but there's, you know, and there's other guys, you know who they are, and or hopefully you identify who they are. But somebody who's a really great smooth pedaler, who's a big body, that's a good guy too, you know, and somebody who doesn't have like a lot of snap, they're great, because like if they do come out of the turn and hit the gas, they might not just like rubber band away from you, and then you got to like jump up to get them. So at the RMR,
choosing your wheels is important.
You can, especially down in here in the U-turn, depending on which way the wind's coming from, but you can typically down here, if you just get used to like going through the turn smooth and not being on the brakes, you can save a lot of energy there and come out of the turn with some momentum. If you come out of the turn a little wide and you're still going a little faster, that just the momentum of, even though you went a little longer line, it's not drastically longer. That can save you some energy. What was the other thing I was thinking? I had another thought process there, but you can definitely save a lot of energy just by following the right wheels, taking the right lines in the turns, and not being out in the side. Like, definitely a lot of people at RMR are concerned about their safety, understandably so. So it
might be group riding 101.
Yeah, we could go back to group riding 101, but if this is the kind of the lane,
the drag strip.
Yeah, you got this mass of people rolling down the road. Like, obviously, if you're out here, you're wasting energy, but not much good happens right here either. Like, if there's a crash, you don't have anywhere to go. So
you're not going to be able to follow anything.
Yeah.
You know, you're stuck in the middle.
Yeah, we could get this. What happens is it tends to be like a convection oven, and it's either people are coming up the outside, and the people in the middle are kind of dribbling out the middle, or the guy at the front's going so hard that the middle is getting pulled out, and these people are like looking for places to get in, so they're either like falling in line like that, or they're just going to the back. But the only time you really want to be in the middle is when it's going hard, because if it's slow and you're in the middle, people are the course is so wide there that people are kind of swarming from the outside. So I like, if the wind's blowing from this side, you know, typically you're going to be up against the wall a little bit more. And it's going to be harder to pass coming up this side into the wind. But the stronger the wind is, the more it's going to lengthen. If the wind's headwind, it's going to want to mass more. And if the wind's tailwind, it'll mass, but it won't be as drastic as like with a headwind. So I don't know if that makes sense, but try to ride on the perimeter without being like in the wind. And ideally, if you're on the perimeter of the protected side, right? And sometimes that means you're riding up against the barrier, which might feel a little sketchy, but that's where you're saving the energy. And that these guys, because they're getting protection from these guys, they're probably moving forward more than moving back. So one thing that we could maybe talk a little bit more about. We'll get this kind of breaking away from the Criterium thing a little bit, but just kind of group riding 101, which doesn't seem to have, I don't know, we probably could learn more these days, and when we go out on rides, if we didn't all just try to tear each other's legs off all the time.
So yeah, let's talk about, so you got in the breakaway. This is, as far as swapping off.
Yeah, so when we all go on like a big group ride from the shop, or if you ride with like the Plan 7 guys, almost all group rides are like 2-up. So I call it Noah's Ark. So you got the donkeys and the horses and whatever, and
elephants at the back.
Both sides are going same pace. And when the guys at the front, they look at each other, they go, "You done?" "Oh, yeah, I'm done." They go to the back, and it's just this that's a great way to cover ground on a Sunday afternoon and keep the ride safe. But really, that never happens in racing. So in racing, you typically have more of a rotation, and so the question is, how long do you pull at the front, and kind of what side are you pulling up on, what side are you pulling down on, and what's the kind of the length of your pull, so we'll say that this is in just a straight up kind of situation, like say it's a headwind. Yeah. So like that. And I guess in a headwind it doesn't really matter which side you pull off on. But the gist is, let's say, just to clarify it, it's coming a little bit this way. So it's not,
wind's never full on straight in the face.
So it's a little bit off center. So you always want to pull through on the protected side. You may see a little more of like a flare to the line like that.
Echelon, yeah.
So in the group riding setting like this, what you might do if you want to torture everybody versus if you want to keep the group together are a little bit different. But if you were out on a group ride and you want to keep all your friends together, and typically like this guy pulls off, these guys start rolling through, and depending on the length of the group, you may even see it be like a double pace line where as you're pulling off, you're drifting back slowly, and there's actually 2 lines. So this would just be like what you would call a rotation or a pace line. These guys are going back, and these guys are going forward, and basically on this side, it's plus 2 miles per hour faster than what these guys are going back. Like, that's a guess, but
it's a subtle difference. The guys coming up here need to. It's always, if you're doing a quick rotation, you're what I call up and off. You're up and you're off, and when you're off, you do have to back off. Like holding it at the same speed that you came up with just makes it harder on the guy who's trying to come through on you, and that that's less efficient, because then it's just the pace is going to keep upping until people crack, and then everyone they hit each other.
Typically, what happens is, like, let's say this side's going 20 and this side's going 18. All of a sudden, people start going, "Well, I need to go 22 to get around this guy because this guy didn't let up." And then the next thing goes,
going 20. Yeah.
The next thing you know, this side's going 28, and this side's going 26, and no one's getting any rest.
And then pretty soon it looks like this, and the guy at the front is flicking his elbow because he can't. No one's coming around him, and he wonders why. And so it's really important to, then this kind of goes into being in the breakaway. Working together and being, not being the strongest guy in the breakaway. You're never going to win the bike race by being the strongest person in the breakaway. You're going to win the bike race by being, the smartest person in the breakaway. And so you see this a lot. People want to show off that they're, the strongest person and they can drag the race away. But really in the end, it's seldom up to one person to make that happen. And working together and working to the lowest common denominator, working to the weakest link, is what's going to make it the most efficient and make you, and your group stay away. And so, kind of getting back into race tactics.
Yeah.
It's really important to kind of read the group and also to get along well. If the wind is coming from this side, you pull off to the left because now as you come back, everyone is then getting the shelter from you on the left. If you pull off to the right and the wind's coming from this side, all these guys now don't get any little break from you and have to pull through just that much harder, and it's just less efficient, So,
on the same token, in that same situation, you don't ride down this side of the road,
put everybody in the gutter,
because these guys aren't getting as much draft as this guy, and all of a sudden they get tired and they're like,
yeah, because we're talking echelons. If the wind is coming from the side, you're going to be riding like this. And if you're over here, this is everyone's good, but this guy is not. This person is not in a good place. They're going to be suffering, so right over here, because then all of a sudden everybody gets in, into the echelon, and again, it's more efficient, and that's, it's really important to, think about that when you're in a breakaway and trying to make things, actually work, because you're looking for cohesion.
Just a side note to that, let's say he is in the breakaway, and there's 4 guys going down the road really hard, you're trying to organize a chase in this kind of crosswind situation. If you're chasing and you're over here, no one's going to help you, right? So the minute, let's say there's 3 guys up the road, they're going really fast.
And they've got it over in the gutter because they're trying to sucker everyone else into staying.
And finally, there's separation. You're not going to get much help if you're this guy. You better either be able to close it, or you better realize really quick that this is happening, and you just pull out. You start another echelon, and you'll never see it locally, but you'll see it in the pro races where there's 7 echelons of 30, well not 30, 15, 20 guys each, or 5 echelons of big, huge groups. And they may be going exactly the same pace down the road.
It's terrible.
But the last thing, you don't want to be the guy back, I guess if you're up in the front group, you still want to be that guy that you better be.
Because pretty soon you'll be with
exactly. But anyway, if you're trying to make a chase, you also got to think about the people who you're going to ask for help in just a second. And if you're riding on the side of the road where you're beating them down, they're not going to be too eager to help you. Whereas, if the guy behind you's got teammates up there, he's not going to help you anyway, so you might as well just stay over there. But that's a whole other subject. Let's stick with the inner break. And right now you're trying to make this thing happen. You're not trying to figure out you're just trying to get this thing 30 seconds down the road so you can start to try to figure out how you're going to sort it out and be the first one out of these 5 guys to cross the line. But if you're trying to keep it together, definitely there's going to be a couple strong guys, there's going to be a couple weak guys. Well, not necessarily weak, but sometimes those weak guys, even though you could just ride them off maybe you could just one hard pull and they'll go away. Sometimes it's nice to have those guys there because this guy might be on out of that team ABC situation, he might be on team A, and all of his teammates are looking for a reason to not do any work. This is a really popular thing here. So Team A's got 8 more guys in the race. Their weakest guy's up here, and they're not working because they got a guy up there, right?
So you don't want to get rid of him.
Yeah. So, it's beautiful when he's up there.
Keep him in the breakaway.
And you want to keep him for a while. So anyway, if you're trying to keep it together, like Jeff was saying, pulling through on the right side of the road. What happens when we're going down the back side of the drag strip? Instead of pulling to the left, well, the wind's still coming from this direction.
And all of a sudden you're going this way.
Yeah, now we're going this way. Yeah. You're pulling through on a different So typically on the top and bottom of the course, you're switching direction.
And the quicker you can figure, the quicker everyone kind of can get dialed into that, obviously the quicker you're going to be more efficient and you're going to save each other energy. You cut, like say we've gone up the course and now we've turned around and this is the back stretch now, and so we're going this way. If since you were going up the other way, you're always rotating to the left. But since initially you're rotating to the left, going up the other stretch, you don't want to just keep going to the left, because then all of a sudden again, everyone isn't getting that echelon. They're not getting any shelter from you. So then, kind of sensing that and immediately now rotating to the right, is going to again just make it more efficient. Typically,
I do this. I'm like, come on, this side.
Okay, we were going this way. Or, everyone was going off this way, and now we're going to go this way. And you can, and then use your words. Everyone's got a little bit of breath. And,
switch.
Switch is something that we say a lot. Swap left. Sometimes it's a bit of a. There's always some brain surgeon out there that doesn't get it, and you got to let them know. But I think most people, it's with experience you learn that, and it's definitely, like we said, it's a cycling 101. But it's it's something that everybody I think kind of gets lost in that. I'm yelling at my teammates often, when we're chasing and we're trying to chase something down. If you're riding down along, if we're like talking about a road race, which is a totally different situation, but if you're riding down a long stretch of road and you're chasing something, the wind can be variable and it can change, and again in a teamwork type situation, you want to give all your teammates the best possible ride that they can have. So it's a lot of just kind of swap right now and pass, and everyone kind of like communicates that, and it's and it has to come from the back a lot of times. It's in a road race situation because the guy in the front can't feel it, but the guy in the back who's in the gutter obviously has that. He knows, and he needs to let the guy in front know. And I think there's a lot of just subtle communication that happens in bike racing. That don't be afraid to talk. You don't have to be a jerk, but you can definitely communicate with your breakaway companions and try to get the best outcome.
So there's a lot of things that can happen here to make this group successful or fall apart. Like a lot of times the cohesion breaks down because someone decides they start sitting on because a team's got a really great sprinter in there, or they're just fried, and even though they're fried they may not be able to contest their race. These guys start getting frustrated, and so that's the beauty of just racing a lot and trying to figure out how to just
or the chess mat. Bike racing is chess.
Learn those things and read those situations. But you don't, like Jeff said, you don't want to necessarily be the strongest guy, the guy who's doing the most work. And you don't necessarily have to always, like if you're this guy and you are kind of weak, you're probably going to have a better chance of them dragging you down the road if you keep pulling through. And even if when you get to the front, you can barely get around the guy and the group's pace slows down by a mile an hour or 2 miles an hour, they're probably going to get less frustrated with you doing that than just sitting back here and going, I'm going to snake you guys, so, or I can't. Yeah, that's a good one. So, anyway, maybe like if you're from a more individual perspective, if you're in this situation and you want to conserve energy, you're looking for the smoothest rider that puts the biggest hole in the wind, and that's whose wheel you want to be on. And it's, it's a little tricky to how to get on that person's wheel, but just sit out a pole, let them, and then when that person gets to the back, I'll back on their wheel.
That's definitely a trick that I like to use a lot. If you're in a breakaway, find the biggest guy and get behind him, because that's just going to give you that much more efficiency and that much less hole in the way. And the little guys the little guy is in the best situation in a breakaway because he gets to get, everybody's bigger than him, so it's easy. But as a bigger person, as a bigger rider, generally, I always try to identify the guy whoever's as big as me or bigger, and get behind them as quickly as possible. And and like Ryan said, miss one turn until this guy comes through. Say this is the big guy, and you just wait for him to come, or say it's this guy, and it kind of goes all the way around. And then here he is. And now everyone's stuck.
They crashed.
But I think you get to sit. You're sitting out, and you want this guy to be on your wheel. Just sit out until he's here, and then just hop back in. And that, you don't want to communicate that. You don't want to let anyone else know that's what you're doing. But this is kind of where this is the experience and the chess match of bike racing. Let's say this breakaway is going to get away. How are you going to make it the easiest on yourself and still make the breakaway stay away? One way is to pick the biggest guy. Other things is don't force the pace. If everyone's able to do, let's say 42 kilometers an hour down the straight, don't try to make it be 44, because that's going to crack somebody, and then you've got somebody sitting on, and and then like Ryan said, that's going to kind of change the dynamic, and all of a sudden you're down one guy helping you chase, and then it also kind of changes everybody else's attitude towards the breakaway, and then maybe no one gets along, and you get caught. So it's
the other thing you got to be thinking about if you're up here is what's going on behind you. Is the chase coming hard? Is it not coming at all? And like if there's guys up here and they got teammates chasing, that's probably going to, especially in RMR, because some people may not know this, but when you're going down this side of the course, you can look over there and see what's happening. Don't tell everybody that. But so you got to think about
you see there's 6 guys on the front riding full gas.
Yeah.
You guys need to turn it up, But if you look back and you see everyone's spread across the road, and it doesn't look like anything's happening, you can kind of tone it down, and you get to check in. I think one thing that's really important in bike racing is look behind you. Always look behind you. Don't
not like
take
you're in
big
the middle
risks.
of the field,
but but in the breakaway, it's just another way of being aware of the bike race, be aware of what's happening, and I think looking behind you, checking out. This goes back to attacking, but you attack, put in 5 pedal strokes, check out what's behind. Make sure that no one's on your wheel. I see that so often, guys. That people are attacking, and they're just dragging the whole field up, and that's just shooting a bullet with no reward to yourself. And in the same situation, if you're going to lap the field, don't keep riding 45k an hour. Ride 40k an hour. So you don't need to get back up there.
This is another super big pet peeve of mine, but it tends to happen you got 5 guys going down the road, and they're probably in that teams A through E situation. They're often teams A through E, and there's not much chasing, and these guys are just emptying the tanks. They're already 30 seconds up the road. The field's not riding very hard. They're all just going pole for pole with each other. There's no like tactical thought process going on. They're just like, we're in the break. Go like mad, Well, what good does it do for them to be 2 minutes up the road at the RMR instead of 30 seconds? Like, it's not a stage race. They're not getting GC time. If you're in that situation, you got guys that just want to unload the tank, it might be time to start missing a few poles and then trying to attack them, and maybe, hopefully, in a minute, it's 3 out of 5 because you attacked after some idiot took a really long pole and you gapped him off. But just, you got to be thinking about and if you're one of these guys and you can't beat 2 or 3 of them in a sprint, maybe it's time to start sitting on near the end of the race and hope that some of your guys bridge up. But when Jeff was talking about looking back, there's a guy who's raced a lot longer than me or Jeff, named Rich Broom. So you'll be going down the road. You think you're in a break. You think there's 5 of you. You think you've been away for 2 laps, and all of a sudden you look back and Rich is right there. He's been there the whole time, and you've never even seen him. He's really good at it.
Because he hides out. Yeah.
Yeah, and when this guy comes to the back and he's like, I got to get back on, Rich is over here, so when the guy looks over, he doesn't see him, and then all of a sudden Rich slides over here. He's awesome at it. And usually
that's just increasing his odds. We're talking about increasing your odds all the time.
So looking back, seeing what's going on is important.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people get caught up, you know, like, oh, we got to stay away, and then all of a sudden, instead of 5 guys swapping out, there's 4, and no one really even thinks about it. And then, you know, and then maybe that guy's the strongest guy, the fastest sprinter, and he's just kind of laughing at you. You know, you got to kind of check in with what's happening. I think, you know, just kind of awareness. Awareness is really, it's really an easy thing to say, but in bike racing, being aware is an asset. You know, just being aware of what kind of energy people are doing, and
so just on the average, like what would be the average length of a pole in a 5 or 6 man breakaway? I mean, obviously it's always going to be different based on the variables that we discussed.
Yeah, so it's going to vary different. So I can
just like for a training situation.
But if it's in a headwind like this, your pole's going to be short. It's going to be
up and off.
Yeah,
you know, because
5-10 seconds, and then
or even you know, you just rotating.
If there's only 4 or 5 people though, it's probably
harder to do,
shorter. Or a lot, I mean, 5 or 10 seconds. But if it's tailwind like this, 40 seconds, 30 seconds, you know. And that's, so if you're in this situation and you're stronger, but you do want the group to succeed, you don't necessarily go up and take the pace up 5 miles an hour. You just pull longer or pull 1 or 2. Another thing, again, if you're trying to keep the group together, especially in this situation, when you hit the front, you got to realize this guy's coming back here, and he's a little gassed. You don't necessarily want to just drill it. If you want this guy to stay with you, if you want him to start suffering and maybe start sitting out, you got to kind of take that risk. Then you know, pulling through really hard is a different thing. But in general, get to the front. If you want to take it up a mile an hour or 2 miles an hour, that's fine, and pull 10 seconds longer, 15. I was the master at it with Jeff, and when Zabriskie would race around here, I mean, I could only pull like 1 to 3 with him, you know, but he also knew not to drop me. Like, you know, he's being nice. He wasn't trying to win the race. But anyway,
we like Ryan.
So Jeff cuts me some slack out there. So anyway, let's say.
Well, one thing though, just to kind of talk a little bit more about that. Usually longer poles are kind of like maintenance poles. You know, the brake is settled. It's established. You're in the move. Got a really good. You know you're going to stay away, or you know you're going to be away for a while. It's everyone kind of settles in a little bit longer pull, because then everyone else behind you is just getting that much more rest, and then they can give a longer pull. You know, and typically the more kind of swapping off, and the more
energy wasted in this whole like convection.
But it also, but the other thing that does, the convection thing, is it tends to always up the ante. You know, because unless you're really, really subtle and you really know what you're doing, just kind of everybody just starts coming through a little bit faster, a little bit faster, a little bit faster, and so that's usually typically kind of at the end of the race sort of situation, or early, you know, in the breakaway situation where if it's getting kind of drastic and you need to stay away, quicker pulls are always, you know, typically at least always, you know, typically going to be more effective for kind of even motivating everybody else. You know, if you're trying to get the race down the road, you know, get everybody to swap off quicker. You know, and again, communicating. You know, like, hey, let's just swap off. You know, let's speed this up, because that it kind of just raises everybody's, like, they start vibrating. You know, and everybody wants to make it. You know, like wants to match each other. You know, that's where kind of competitiveness comes in. You want to all match each other. You know, if you're out there and you ride for 40 seconds and then swap off, then the next guy kind of just settles in and rides for 40 seconds, and it might go down a bit, and you know, and you kind of gain and lose. But if you're just doing this, it's maybe not the most efficient, but it's definitely the quickest. Yeah, it's more intense. You know, but so it's not something you can do all day, but it's definitely quicker.
A little of it's affected by the course too. So like, if you're coming into the U-turn, it's a lot easier to swap and accelerate out of the U-turn and take the front short of than trying to pass the guy 15 meters before going into the U-turn, and then kind of maybe take a kind of a not as nice a line. So if I'm up there with Jeff and it's headwind like this, and we're coming down here, I'm probably going to just sit behind him until we hit even if it means he pulls an extra 5, 6, 7 seconds of what we had been doing. And then I'm going to come underneath him on the inside on the U-turn and use the tailwind and push me back up to speed. And he'll kind of
or even just let me go around the corner. Yeah. Typically, whoever's going into the corner, and you know the corner's coming. it's almost always better just to kind of don't disrupt things, let the guy ride through the corner. 'Cause, you know, every corner you get a break. You don't have to pedal through a corner, you know, typically. And so, you know, it's sort of an agreement. You know, it's like, okay, I'm going to pull a little bit more, but now I'm going to, you get the first shot at the corner, and you can take it a little bit easier. You know, like I would in this situation. You know, if I were to I'd pull a little bit longer, but then I know that I can coast from here to here, and then swing off, and then I know that, you know, 4 guys are going to come under me, and so I get even more rest, you know, and as opposed to if Brian were trying to kind of snivel in right here, it's just disruptive, you know, because then I get put into a different place. I don't get to be behind the big guy anymore, and you know, it's just kind of like it just breaks the rhythm up, you know. I think the biggest thing is to try to, you know, if you do want to get along, keep the rhythm as smooth as possible.
So we'll go into the kind of the last thing, the sprint. So there's kind of 2 approaches you can take. I'm a sprinter. I'm not a sprinter.
I value my skin. I don't.
Yeah, and there's in that light, I have a guy on my team who can sprint, or I want to help someone on my team sprint, or not. So let's maybe talk real quick about what you do if you're not a sprinter. Like if you're out there at RMR, typically, I bet you within the first 10 minutes of the race, if you've raced out there enough, you could probably be 99% correct on whether the race is going to be a field sprint or not. You just kind of get this sense that, like, man, everything that goes away is coming back, and people are really antsy, and
you can read the attitude of all your
competitors. The people are really fired. If it's crosswind and, you know, 2 laps into the race, you've already made like 3 passes down the gutter where your tongue's hanging on your top tube. It's not going to be a field sprint that day. It might be a sprint between like 3 or 4 guys. So once you identify that it's going to be a field sprint, and you're not a sprinter, you might as well, I don't know, I'd go for the long bomb. You know, wait, maybe somebody else has the same attitude, and there's a couple attacks, and you counter one of those attacks, and maybe there's just enough hesitation that you can get away.
Well, it's sort of a late move.
Yeah, you see it on the tour every once in a while. You see like 2 guys.
Well, and this is saving all your bullets and firing them all at once.
Yeah,
you know,
so
this is kind of that attitude. Like, okay, this race is going to be a sprint. I can tell. You know,
5 laps to go, you've identified it's going to be a sprint.
You hide out. You save all your energy. You don't get suckered into the attacks because you know. And this is a gambling. You know, you make a judgment call. You say, this is my tactic today. I'm not a sprinter, but I know that the breakaway is not going to stay away. I'm going to save my bullets. I'm going to save them all up. And with 1 lap to go, 2 laps to go, I'm just going to dump it all out and see what happens.
It's fun. It's probably the safest way to.
And you get caught, you get to sit up and get out of the way.
Yeah. So when?
It's like ideally after somebody else made a really hard effort and people made some effort to bring them back, counterattack. Yeah. But,
the moment that there's hesitation is a really good moment. You know, like Ryan said, when if something hard has just happened. That lull after like a difficult moment is a really good point.
At the same time, if these guys are all from the same team and there's 7 guys in the same jersey and they're going 30 miles an hour and you're right here, and you start to do this, it's not going to do much, you know. So, like,
but here's one situation though, you know, and people, this is about timing, but let's say we don't have any people leading out. There's 3. You got 4 guys on a team, and they're leading out, and you're sitting here, and you're in this general area, and it's 3 laps to go. Are these 3 guys going to lead this guy out in 3 laps? Are they going to be able to hold it together? Maybe if they're Supermen, they can, but maybe not. So you wait. Normally when there's in a lead out situation, guys aren't rotating; they're just pulling, and so you wait for this guy to drop off. You wait for this guy to drop off. And then this guy gets out there, and he's riding along, and he's still going really hard, and you know that everyone behind you is still, they're gassed. And, again, you're not a sprinter. This guy is. This guy is going to, maybe he has a lap to go, or even, he's just turned onto the back stretch, and you realize this guy has to pull from here all the way to, like, here for Homeboy to sprint, right? At some point, he's going to start going slower and slower and slower. And then the sprinter number, if he really wants to sprint and not get kind of suckered into a late race attack, boom, and he's all of a sudden got to make a choice. He's either going to jump with you and drag everybody else up, or he's kind of got to trust his guy and trust that there's going to be a reaction from behind. But if you can kind of time that, that's timing. And that might be like right here in the chicane, or right after, or even around the last corner. That's a little short, but that's kind of the strategy there, is just thinking about when is every there's always a moment, and we talk about this on the pro team. There's always a moment in the sprint where, I don't know why we say this, but the race kind of balks, and I don't know what balk means, but it balks. And when saying that, it's like you're going full gas, and all of a sudden there's like this moment where somebody ran out of gas when they shouldn't have, and everybody else doesn't want to do their effort yet because it's too soon. And there's a moment, and that's the moment you go, and that can happen in the RMR really simply, and that's what you. It doesn't always work, but that's what you kind of have to sniff for if you're not a sprinter. You got to look for that moment, and it can be like win. It can be 2 laps to go, or it could be in the last 3/4 of the last lap.
So let's maybe look at you're gonna be a sprinter. And so you've identified it's going to be a field sprint. Maybe let's say you're doing it for yourself. You're not leading out or taking advantage of the lead out. So at the RMR, it's a little non-traditional. It's more of, you could call it a circuit race, a little more than a criterium. If it's a 4-corner criterium, you can't be 30 guys back with 1 lap to go. Right? At RMR, you could be the last guy across the start-finish line, and you could probably still contest a sprint.
If it's a headwind, yeah, you could.
Yeah. So, what affects the beautiful thing with the crit is you've been across the start-finish line probably 20 times already that day. You know what the conditions are like. Hey, when we go through the start-finish line, we're going 30 miles an hour because we have a tailwind. So the sprint's going to be 40 miles an hour, and you're going to need to go from further out because you can sustain it longer with the tailwind. Versus it's a headwind, we're barely moving 20 miles an hour going down the start-finish. The sprint's going to be, you're going to need to wait till the last second, and it's going to be a really sharp, quick 150 meters,
because you can't maintain it.
Because you can't maintain that power. So you got to kind of identify those things and have that plan in place way before the guy rings the bell, 1 lap to go.
And you've got all day to do that. That's kind of like Brian said. That's the beauty of the crit. Like if you come into the race and you decide that it's going to be a sprint, now you've got an hour to figure out how you're going to sprint. Or whatever. You got 45 minutes. However long your race is, you've got that amount of time to work on strategy. And and that's something that it has to be in the back of your mind. If you want to contest a sprint, you need to think about how you're going to do it. And the more you think about it, the more you strategize during the race, and the more you read the conditions and read what your competitors are doing, the better off you're going to be. And it's kind of then you pick the wheel.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Watch what everyone else is doing. If you decide it's going to be a sprint, and some great, like the guy that you would consider to be the great sprinter is attacked 10 times. He actually got in a break and he got brought back. He's probably not going to be sprinting so well. You need to change your tactic, and pick the wheel you want to come off of. Pick the strategy that you need, and again, just be aware of what the situation is.
You got to be like at the bottom of the course here. Let's say there's no wind, but just kind of neutral conditions. Come around that corner. You got to be a little patient. You got to let things play out just a little bit. If you're the first guy out of that turn, tailwind, headwind, whatever, it's not going to happen. And typically when you do come out of that turn, somebody hits the gas pretty hard. I don't know how it goes in the B-flight anymore, but it seems like there's always somebody on it. I don't know,
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, they come, it's like that.
They come around that turn and they're on the gas, and you got to identify where the wind's coming from, which side you want to pass on. So if the wind's coming out of this side, let's say this is the center line rule, right? Like they sometimes enforce and they sometimes don't. If the wind's coming out of this side, it's going to be faster to come up this side. But if these people are smart, they're already over here. So you want to come up this side, but you gotta know that at some point if these guys start to bog down, you can't wait. You just got to go by them. So these are all things you kind of have figured out in your head
prior to
before that last lap starts.
When I think kind of judging, someone once told me, like figure out how long you can sprint. Can you sprint for 200 meters? Can you sprint for 300 meters? Can you sprint, and can you sprint for only 100 meters? Like what's your ability? And then and one thing he said, was like, look, figure it out. And like again, we've got all these laps, and you can go, you estimate, I can go from this point, where this tumbleweed is sitting, I can go from here to there. I know I can do that. So that's where and then kind of think backwards. Like, okay, here's the mark. I can go from here to here, and I know I can go full gas and accelerate, for that duration. Where do I need to be coming out of this corner to be able to be there in the right position? Do I need to be 20th wheel? Probably not. You probably want to be like 5th wheel, and set a goal for yourself. Say, coming into this last corner, I need to be, 5th wheel. I need to be 6th wheel. I need to be, 3rd wheel. Or you're never going to win out of 1st wheel, probably, like Ryan said. But you need to. It's important to kind of analyze the race and realize and figure out where you need to be, and then come into it with a plan and stick to it. Or at least make it a goal to stick to it. You can, the best riders are the people that can, deal with the adversities, and if it doesn't work out, you come at it a different way. But I think it's really important to kind of think backwards, and in a sprint situation, I can go from here to here. It's going to take 2 people to accelerate out of this corner. I better be 3rd wheel right here. Simple enough, and then obviously it's never going to be a perfect world, but you can always strive for that and set that goal for yourself, and then if you do it and you get beat, then at least you tried, and at least you made the effort, and you kind of came in with a strategy, and so you can kind of go back and say, all right, maybe I can't go that far, maybe I have to go from here, and I need to be 4th wheel here, but I think it's really important to be aware of how the race is going to play out, and be aware of what your tactics are, and then try to at least stick to them and make them play out. If that makes sense.
Anybody have questions? We can open up to questions.
I got So Jeff, 3-4 years ago, tour of Utah, Crater Park City.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was one at the finish line. Where did you know that race was yours? And where did you make the move
Well, that was a race where, like, again, reading strategy. We started it, and I wasn't sure how. However, you kind of got to. You come into the race and you have an attitude about, you have an idea about how you want to have the race go, but really, what's going to happen is how everyone else is racing, and they're going to dictate to you what the outcome will be. And I could sense really early on in that race that something was going to go early. I think I remember like Finney got away, and it was like like whoa, he's really like getting a pretty good gap, and no one's really reacting very well. And so he came back, and I think it happened a few times where it was like, man, it just doesn't seem like everybody's that committed to keeping this together. It was a hard crit, and you could tell that everyone was a little bit scared by it, and I just could really, I could sense early on that Levi was going to mark Mancebo was going to mark Lil. Down the line, I know that I'm not a threat in the GC. And so it was almost just like to me, it was a sense. I just said, I said to myself, if I'm not the next guy to go away, the next guy that goes away is going to win. And so I did it, and because I waited for that counter. I countered, I don't know if it was Finney or who, but somebody had been away, and it seemed pretty dangerous. It was kind of scary. I was like, oh man, this guy's going to stay away. So I thought to myself, as soon as he comes back, if he does, and he did, I'm going to be the next one. Because I don't think it's going to work out that it's going to be anything other than a long bomb that's going to win. And so it worked. And it doesn't. I've had plenty of ideas about races and they've gone completely differently. But that was obviously a really lucky result for me, or not lucky, but a situation where it did work out, but again, it was kind of the awareness. I feel like is I really have a specific memory of thinking that if I don't go now, someone else will, and that they'll get to win the race, and I don't want that to happen. I want to win.
You can feel that next move's going to stick.
Yeah, and it was like I could feel it. It was like I could feel the attitude of the group. You know, you can. It's weird and it's subtle, but you can. The more you do it, you can kind of sense. You sense the attitude of the group. You know, you kind of feel.
One thing I'd add to that, like maybe being on the other end of the spectrum a little bit, but especially for people who are new to it, and these races criteriums always start hard. I don't know if it's because the guy's girlfriend's sitting on the side of the road or what, but there's a lot of criteriums where 15 minutes into it, I'm like, no way, I can't do this the whole. And then 5 minutes later, it mellows out, and next thing you know, you're in the move or whatever. But the races start really hard, and you got to learn to just. There's a time where here we are telling you right at the front, you know, be aggressive. There's a time where you got to just like sit back and save your cookies for a second. He calls them your bullets. I call them your fun tickets. But so.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's kind of realizing that this can't be maintained. You know, like if you're in a group that you feel like these are your peers, and you're in a race where everyone should be at your level, and you're back at the back, just going like, what is happening here? What like I'm better than this. There's probably a reason. It's unsustainable, and so to try to then attack, or like participate in the race because that's what you do. It doesn't make any sense because if you can't maintain it and you feel like everybody around you is someone that you know all these people and you know that this isn't normal, this doesn't feel right, it really makes sense to be conservative and wait for everyone to use up what they've got and then go.
You just got to be careful, like get behind somebody who does pull the chute. Like you're back here being conservative and this guy's starting to let a little gap open up. You gotta go around him and do it, but.
Being aware, reading the body language of the people around you. If you've got it, and it's hard, but you've got it. Look around you. Make sure that you're with the people that aren't not going to make it. That's important.
That criterium down at the Pioneer Park is that way. It starts really hard. And like last year, there was a crash in our race pretty early, and like just. If the move went in the first 10 laps, I wasn't going to be there because I was back there like trying to catch my breath and kind of get established and just settled in. But you gotta know that the race is going to mellow out. And if it doesn't, then come back and tell me I was wrong. But almost 99% of the time, it starts super hard for the first 10 or 15 minutes, and it just seems. Redlands.
Well, I was going to say, I can tell you about Redlands.
There's a criterium in Redlands in California, and we used to go down there all the time being kind of barely ready to race. We hadn't even raced, and there's all these guys who are way above our level.
And this is what the course looks like.
The course is a big figure 8.
Well, it's like this. It's like... And then you go like this,
yeah.
you go like this, you go like this, and you go like this, and you go like this, and you go like this.
And here's the first one. I remember thinking, I had that thought, no way. I'm like dying. And I look up at the thing that says 75 minutes to go. Right?
Yeah, it's an hour and a half, Chris.
Yeah. And, you're going like 35 miles an hour down the start finish with the tailwind, and you're doing everything you do just to stay on the wheel in front of you, and you don't know, you don't understand. Part of the reason is going through all those turns, the guys at the front they're saving energy, and you're stepping on the gas every time. So anyway, my point is just you got to have a little faith in the race kind of coming back. One thing when we were talking about, this is when I had this thought and I couldn't think about it, when we were talking about conserving energy, one thing that I do a lot, and I hate when people mess it up. Let's say this is a left-hand turn. You're not going super fast, and it's kind of like where you almost need to brake, but you don't necessarily need to brake type turn. just let a little tiny gap open up. Not enough for a bike, but like as you start to come around this turn, especially if you're in the back part of the field, and then just use your momentum going through the turn to coast back up on the guy in front of you. By having like more, and typically what happens is somebody up here gets on the brake.
It's kind of an accordion effect.
Yeah, and if you just, especially if you're riding at the back, like you can really let a bigger gap open up, but you just don't want it to be big enough that the guy behind you wants to go around and jump in. But you can save a lot of energy in the turns by just not being on the brakes. And like, if you were on the brakes hard on that turn the lap before, maybe just let a 3 or 4 foot extra gap get it.
Yeah, you don't always have to be glued to the person in front of you. And in fact, it's more efficient to not, around corners.
Because if you get on him and he hits his brake, maybe you have to go up one left side or right side of him. Whereas like if he starts to slow down and you've got all that momentum, you can use your momentum just to go around him easily instead of like being on the brake and then having to kind of redirect. So any other questions or scenarios, people? Yeah?
Can you touch upon like getting boxed in and how to escape, or is there an escape? You get kind of
Like in a sprinting situation or at
yeah.
like,
Or, I mean, even if you're in a big group and you guys are accelerating down the course.
yeah, that's hard. Like
You want to move up, and you're kind of boxed into the center where you didn't really want to be.
Well, one thing that's kind of a rule in cycling, and this is kind of again subtle, and you don't want to be aggressive and cause wrecks, but the person who's got the handlebar in front of the other person always wins, and most people recognize that. And part of moving up and moving around, and especially in a bigger peloton, is just owning it. The person that breaks last gets through, and it's it's tricky and it's a little bit scary. And I've been doing it for 15 years, and I still don't like fighting in a really tight peloton, but it's just all about passively aggressively taking the other person's wheel and backing them out, and because they don't want to crash, you don't want to crash, but if you're just a little bit more of the jerk, seriously, that's what it's about.
Tough, though.
Riding around in a big peloton is just a bunch of all of your best friends being jerks to each other. Because that's how it works. If you give way to everyone, you're going to be at the back. That's the reality of it. And so if you and this isn't these aren't aggressive moves. This is just if your shoulder or your handlebar is just a touch ahead of the person next to you, you can start you have sort of the ability to come over, and and it's you obviously kind of learn how that works for yourself and how it works in the group, but it's and I think at the lower levels it's definitely something where you need to use that wisely and don't be too aggressive, because there's a lot more chance for things to happen. But to me, one of the things that when I first went to Belgium that I realized is if bike parts aren't touching, there's no problem. And so as long as you don't get tangled up, you're not going to crash. As long as everybody around you has the same ability that you have, and obviously, supposing you have ability to not crash yourself. But I think it's a subtle art, but it's about just being a little bit more dominant than the person next to you and just kind of moving them out of the way. And again, subtly. I'm not condoning big aggressive moves and elbows out and stuff like that, because that's not, I don't think that's correct, and no one wants to be that person, and because that does cause wrecks. But getting out of a boxed-in situation is kind of about being just a little bit more assertive than the next person.
What do you use besides your experience for, like, when you're in a 4 or 5 person break and you're trying to maintain the 26, 24 speed, whatever the speed is? But a lot of times, are you using cadence, a speedometer, or just your body feel? Sometimes people will, as soon as that guy pulls over, they're sprinting. And,
That's feel. That's just feel to me.
Me too.
You just need to. It's just the subtle art of doing a pace line, and it takes a lot of practice. And I think down the line, like Brian and I have talked about this, but I think it takes work on the road, and if, hopefully we can do a clinic working on that kind of thing down the road. But it's really just, it's about being aware of that you do need to be doing that. The person that's attacking up the road, probably no one ever told them don't do that. And it's
Ryan tells me all the time.
well, Ryan, but then you're not doing it. You're noticing the other person. But
if you have a power meter and you go back and look at a file from something like that, you see all these like you're going 300 watts, and then all of a sudden 500 watt spike, like something's wrong, right? You're going too, you shouldn't have these big spikes in power when you hit the front, and unless you're trying to.
I think that comes from training at certain powers, like especially going to training. If you have a power meter, like I give people I'm coaching people and I give them very specific power level, and hopefully they do it out on train or not on a trainer, and it's variable, it's up and down. But you learn to ride, the more you practice riding at that power, the better you get at doing it on, like 2% grade, 1% grade, downhill. You can kind of, get more out of kind of pedaling, putting out the same power in different situations. And, so obviously you're putting out, a steadier power if you're kind of coming through smoothly as opposed to spiking. And so I think that's something that the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And the more aware of the more kind of in training you kind of check in with that and make yourself aware of it.
There's a guy who used to race around here. He still races cross. We'd be in a break. It'd be like three of us. He'd be sitting on and dying. He'd skip two rotations. So this is me and Mike Sayers are doing this. This is Dave Wood, if you guys know him. We're doing this, and finally we've done 3 or 4 rotations. Dave decides he's going to take a pull, and he just blasts us, man. Like,
just blow everybody.
He goes by us like 5 miles an hour, and then it's just there is an art to it, and and when in doubt, do what the other guys are doing, right? Like I don't know if that's a good thing to live by, but let's hope it works better for you.
But just the kind of the thing that I've always whoever it was that told me the first time, it could have been Ryan, is you just back it off a couple. You really feel it. You're backing off when you pull over, and you go through at the speed that whoever was in front of you went through. But then when you pull off to the left or the right, you let up, and you feel that.
This is the guy pulling over. You're going 30 miles an hour, and this guy pulls over and he doesn't back off. And you're this guy, don't pass him yet.
Yeah.
Just
exactly. Don't one up him.
Just because if you pass him, you're going 32 all of a sudden. Now, and so if somebody wants to show you how strong they are,
let them.
Let them do it. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of.
What do you say to Dave when he pulls off 5 miles an hour faster? I'm curious. What do you really
explosive.
WTF. Pretty much. It's hard, isn't it? It's a tough situation. Like he's back there saying he's hating it, and the next thing you know, he's tearing your leg out. He can't be hating it that bad. So. What else?
Kind words.
I think if you go out there and try to, especially if you go out there by yourself, try to have a plan. Most people are kind of parts of clubs and stuff now, and that's awesome. But when Jeff goes out there by himself, I know kind of what he's going to do. But he does what I kind of, my own terminology is called sniper. He'll let unless he's messing with us, but he'll let a group get up the road, and 4 guys are up the road, and Jeff's back in the field. He's not only in the field; he's like 20 guys deep. And Reed Mumford, that local kid who rode for Optum, would do the same thing. They're so far back there, half the people don't even know they forgot they're at the race. They're so giddy in the race that they forget there's 2 guys in the field that could just go up to the front and bring that thing back in 2 seconds. But Jeff's smart. He's not going to go to the front and just flex it.
Let everyone know you're there. Too.
Yeah. So he'll wait, and maybe wait for some people to chase. And then it's just, bam, super hard. And he gets up here. And then everyone's all excited. The pro guy just went by everybody. And hopefully I'm on his wheel, just barely.
You're like that.
And you know, like I get here, he goes right by him. I go back here, I'm like, can't do anything. And he, you know, he's got enough strength. He goes to the front and tries to help these guys stay ahead while these guys, the chase maybe gets a little more excitement in it. But you gotta, the sniper thing is, one thing you'll see, especially like in the C and D flights out there, is you'll see people like, it's really timid, really timid, really timid. One guy goes and then it's like 50 people chasing him like mad. Like, realize that's gonna happen. When the 50 people chase like mad, and then they catch him and everybody goes, that's when you nail them, and you just, you know, and but the
Yeah, don't get suckered into the sort of the sheep or group mentality that you have to do what everyone else is doing. You know, the best, you know, the best tactic is to do, you know, what's right to win the race, not to do what, you know, not to get kind of like, oh well, everyone else was attacking, so I thought I'd attack. You know, don't be that person. Be the person that attacked when everyone else was blown, because they all were attacking for 20 minutes. You know,
or wait till these three guys go. You go, man, that looks dangerous. I better go and try to jump across. And
right. When everyone, you know, it's kind of settled down, they're like, oh, well, that looks pretty safe. You know, A, B, and C. This is A, B, and C. You know, no one's going to chase this. If you can get across alone, you know, who's going to chase you? You know, and then all of a sudden you're attached onto team A, B, and C, and you know those guys are back there blocking and then, you know, kind of holding up the race for you.
this isn't going from here to the field to this isn't like 5 miles an hour faster than you've been riding. It's a really sharp attack, and maybe you bring someone with you. It's a little easier to do, and then, you know, basically like once you kind of like try to like settle in, you may only have like 30 seconds of gas to like get to here, and it's hard, but you got to get separation.
And again, that's an experience thing. You know, you can like judge how far up the road you can get, or you know how far, like what you can do. You know, if you think you can only do a 10-second gap, don't wait for it to get to 15 because you're not going to make it. You know, go for the 10-second gap. If you think you do 20-second gap, then more power to you. But you know, it's about gauging your effort and doing, you know, what you can do. But you know, and again, I kind of want to stress that I think everyone goes out there, and we're talking a lot about winning, but still, there's so many ways to win a bike race. You know, if you go out there and you get in a breakaway, first time you ever got into one, and you stay out there for 5 laps, that's a victory to me. And that's the kind of the cool thing about bike racing. You can participate in a lot of different ways, and you don't have to be the winner to go home feeling satisfied. So it's, you know, the bottom line is don't be afraid to go out to the RMR if you can't do it, because you can do it. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And it's, you know, that's kind of, I don't know, I always sense a lot of trepidation about the RMR and about crit racing, and it's just, I think just throw yourselves into it and enjoy it, and enjoy the process. Enjoy waiting till the sprint and seeing what you can do, and enjoy trying to get in the break, or enjoy just, you know, watching how it plays out. If you can't do anything else, just you know, you can predict how the race is going to end, even if you know that you have no chance of doing anything in the race or anything else. Still think about, you know, try to predict what's going to happen, and then see if it comes out. You know, you can go home with some experience from that, and I think that's really important. You know, it's a participation sport, and you know, the more you participate, the more experience you get, and the better you get at doing cycling. And you know, it's all about experience.
Just a question about, you know, if you're not, seems like if you're not continually trying to move up, you get towards the back. Is there just a kind of basic technique to try to, you know, to stay up close to the front?
Pretty much, you always got to be moving forward.
It's got to be, and you're just trying to move. You keep on the outside and just follow wheels going.
Yeah, it's kind of like Ryan was saying about the convection, you know, and mostly in a peloton, you know, it's going like this, you know, and there's different layers of that, but it's, you know, so in the middle, the only way to move up from the middle is to get out and up, and you know, and so if you want to be at the front, you kind of need to be in the front wave of that, you know, like we call it surfing. You know, you're trying to surf, you're trying to, you get up, you kind of get stuck in the middle because there's more people, you know, everyone else is trying to get up there too, so they're always going to come over on you, But if you kind of keep pushing out, and like I was talking boxed in, you keep, and it's pushing out. You need to kind of keep coming out and just kind of like riding that front wave, and if you kind of hesitate and get sucked in, then you're in the second wave, and then it's just that much more, you got to surf a little bit further to get back to the front. You can still do it.
There's ways to do it without putting your face in the wind for long periods of time too.
Right.
Like you're looking for people who are doing it and hopping on their wheel as they're going up. And
there's more people coming up. You hang on the side, and you feel, and here comes someone coming up the side, jump on their wheel, and they're going to drag you up to the front. And so try not, the whole efficiency thing is, try not to do any more work than you have to. Let the others do the work for you. And so if someone, if you're 20 guys back and you see somebody start to kind of move up, and maybe they're even two guys ahead of you, just jump up to them, let them pull you up. Because that's a whole lot easier than doing it the whole way yourself. And it's kind of just about. It's about wanting to be at the front, and then just fighting to be there, and always, kind of just keep trying, because you can't stay at the front. You can't just stay at the front. And in a way, you can. You just have to ride really, really hard to do it, and you don't want to do that. You want to be there, but kind of in the second row is the strategy, and so. Really, if you're in the second row, you're going to end up in the third row real quick, and then you just got to get back up to the first row, and then try to hold the second row as long as you can, and then you'll end up in the third row again. It's never ending. That's part of the diversion of it. That's how you can get through a bike race and say, wow, that was 4 hours. Because you're busy the whole time, and the people that are the best bike racers, the best ones in the world, Tom Boonen, these guys, it's because they have focus. They have big engines, but it's because they have just an intense focus that is, they don't get distracted, and they have a plot and they stick to it, and in those races like in Belgium and stuff, and in crits and stuff like that, it's all about being at the front. They don't let things distract them. They don't let things draw them away from doing what needs to happen, and so it's a lot about just keeping your head in the game.
all right, so it's almost 9, so we probably had to wrap this thing up. So if anybody has any questions, you can email me or email Jeff. We could, there's obviously like 10 more levels of this conversation about teamwork and all that. So we appreciate you guys coming. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, my email is just ryan@contenderbicycles.com, and Jeff or I could answer them. So we appreciate you coming.
Thanks,
hopefully,
guys.
hopefully we'll see you on Saturday.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, thank you very much.
Are we riding from here?
Saturday.